Amazing Rimuru fans, the creator hopes you are enjoying the new videos. YouTube has stopped monetizing her channel because they don't accept text-to-speech voices. They want her to use her own voice for all the characters, but she knows you will not enjoy it this way. Your support will help her continue to make videos for you. Check out her Patreon page to support her. The link is in the description.
Masayuki Hanjo is a hero. It wasn't a name he gave himself, but for whatever reason, that is what the people he encounters call him. It hadn't even been a year since he came to this world that made no sense to him. But already, Masayuki's name had spread across the Western nations. Now, nobody failed to recognize it. And his true, unvarnished reaction to this was, why did this happen? To find the answer, we must go back over a year's time. Masayuki was on his way home from school, walking with his friends, when he spotted a beautiful woman with long blue hair. She was like a goddess from Norse mythology, one who would make models and celebrities turn pale, and her hair color was striking enough that it caught his eye even from a distance. If Masayuki had never seen anyone so beautiful before, it was a given that she'd also be the target of attention from everyone else around her.
"Hey, check out that hottie over there,"
he said to his friends, being as honest with his feelings as any male teenager would. But there was no response. Surprised, he turned around, to find a totally unfamiliar world spread before him.
Huh?
His body and his brain instinctively froze. Where's my teacher? What's going on here? He treated his homeroom teacher like an idiot most of the time, but he called for them inside his mind anyway. It accomplished nothing. All he could do was stand there, at a total loss. Sitting at the lip of a fountain in a town square, Masayuki stared into space. Some time had passed. He was calmer now, realizing nothing could be done and wondering how this could have happened. Looking back, that woman was terribly suspicious, that much of a beauty, but for some reason, nobody gave her a passing glance. It wasn't exactly decisive evidence, but that's what Masayuki's instincts told him. But the girl wasn't here. He tried looking around, but there was no sign of her anywhere. Doesn't the girl causing something like this usually come with you? I mean, like, holy crap, is this for real? It's not some prank? I'm really off in some other world? It would certainly make things easier to grasp if someone in on all this was next to him. But Masayuki enjoyed no such convenience. It was almost sunset. He hadn't eaten anything since lunch, and he was hungry. Wait a minute, he thought. This is a town. He counted himself lucky they hadn't transported him to a forest or monster lair or whatever, but how unkind could you get?
Like, normally, wouldn't a king or someone be waiting for me to explain what the hell's going on?
He grumbled to himself, recalling the web novels he enjoyed chatting about with his friends. But reality can be tough. There was no point whining about it, so Masayuki looked back at himself once more. His name was Masayuki Hanjo, age 16, and he had just made it into a fairly competitive high school. He'd taken that occasion to reinvent his look, modifying his school uniform a bit and applying a light blonde dye to his hair. His face was well put together. There was apparently some Russian blood in their heritage, and his mother had beautiful good looks as well. That was probably why his features were so striking, he thought. Not only that, going blonde made him stand out quite a bit. He was on the upper end in terms of popularity at school, and despite not being too physically strong, he still struck a presence around class. That, and he had a secret hobby, manga and anime. He never breathed a word of that at school, but practically speaking, he was a pretty hardcore, if hidden, otaku. Maybe that was why, being thrown into this inexplicable situation, he really wasn't panicking that much. As he took all this into consideration, he checked his uniform and his bag. In one pocket was his wallet, which contained one 10,000 yen bill, 3 1,000 yen bills, and some spare change. His textbooks and such were all in his desk or locker at school. So the only things in his bag were a brand new issue of a weekly magazine, plus his phone and a piece of chewing gum. He had emptied it out at school so it wouldn't be too heavy on the way home, and he was paying big time for it now. Man. Masayuki sighed to himself as he gauged his possessions. If I knew this was gonna happen, I would have prepared a little more. His disaster preparedness kit, tucked into a corner of his room, had everything he would have wanted inside. If he'd had it with him, he'd be fine on his own for around 3 days, he supposed. Having a Swiss Army knife on hand, at the very least, would have made him feel a bit more secure, although he wasn't sure how far a knife would get him around here. Either way, he had nothing very useful on him, except maybe the gum. Masayuki unwrapped the piece and put it in his mouth, hoping to stave off the hunger. Now, the sad truth was that he had literally nothing. Over the past few hours of staring into space, Masayuki had noticed something. The people passing by, talking around him, spoke what sounded like complete gibberish. This was a different world, with a different language, and even getting food could be an uphill battle. They ramped up the difficulty way too much on me, man, but oh well. At worst, I could try negotiating with people. Maybe trade my phone and bag for some food. His mind made up, Masayuki stood from the fountain. He couldn't be sure what this nation was like in terms of laws or safety, but he concluded that, if there was some kind of public institution he could get help from, that was probably the best. Before that could happen, his top priority was survival, and that meant getting some food, at any cost. Not knowing the language was devastating, and right now, he could easily see himself starving to death. Water, he could figure out. Food was another thing entirely. The concept didn't thrill him, but maybe he could go look for discarded scraps somewhere. He needed to find a place with lots around, restaurants, produce stores, that sort of thing. He'd already over the past few hours disposed of any pride he had. Masayuki was flexible that way. So after walking for several minutes, Masayuki successfully found himself in front of a restaurant. It was no grand feat, he simply let the sweet aroma guide him there. Right. Time to negotiate. I'm assuming asking for a job isn't gonna work. I can't even talk with them. The language barrier was just too high. Masayuki had consumed a lot of media in the isekai or otherworld genre, and it felt to him that the protagonists there often didn't have problems with communication. Looking back, that seemed suspiciously helpful. I'm not asking for some kind of video game cheat or whatever, but I wish they at least allowed me to communicate. But there was no one he could grumble about it to, so Masayuki approached the restaurant door, trying to open it. Before he could, it opened from the other side, revealing a loud clamor within. Masayuki took a step back in surprise and found something soft come running into his arms. A cute, petite girl looking a little scared of something. Huh? Am I already in trouble here? He hoped not, but he was right. The girl was now clinging to him, talking rapidly in an unknown language. All Masayuki could do was give her a vague sort of smile and nod. Seeing that, the girl quickly breathed a sigh of relief, and then, for some reason, started to blush, her attention entirely focused on him. If it ended there, it would have been fine, but, of course, it didn't. There was a man nearby, a big, muscle-bound brute of a man, and he was headed straight for the woman in Masayuki's arms. Whoa, if this goes wrong, he might kill me. Masayuki couldn't be blamed for instinctively thinking that. He was a bit over 5.5 feet tall, and this giant was a good head above him. The man's face was reddened, perhaps out of drunkenness, and he had a longsword hanging off his belt. Even without a weapon, there was no way Masayuki could take him. It wasn't a wild stretch of the imagination to picture himself being beaten to death. He thought about fleeing, but the girl was still draped across him. It's over. It's totally over. The smile was still on his face, but he was frozen, knees shaking. The fact that he didn't lose control of his bladder, he thought, was worthy of praise. But then a strange voice spoke into his ear.
Champion-like heroic behavior detected. Unique skill chosen 1 unlocked. Deploy this skill? Yes. No.
Okay? Masayuki wasn't too sure about giving consent to this. But the choice would prove to decisively change his destiny for good.
Confirmed. Acquiring language skills via chosen 1. Acquired. Also deploying heroic aura and heroic compensation.
A cavalcade of unfamiliar terms flashed across Masayuki's mind. What's going on? He struggled to comprehend the events happening to him. But there was no time to ponder over them.
Here, what's the problem, kid? You thinking about getting in my way?
Suddenly, he could understand the giant. That was the power of that chosen 1 skill he'd just awakened to, but Masayuki had no time to bask in it. The important thing was getting out of this scrape. One poor choice and his life was likely over. He thought about going onto his hands and knees, swearing up and down that he meant nothing of the sort, but before he could, the girl in his arms spoke up.
Yes, this person said he'll help me.
Did he now?
He could see a blood vessel throb over the giant's temple. His muscles seemed to visibly swell, making crystal clear how powerful this guy was. Oh man, he doesn't even need to use his sword. 1 punch, and it's over. The fear was strong enough that it gave Masayuki a cool head to think with. But he just couldn't figure out how to escape this alive.
Well, how about that?
Roared the man.
In that case, let's see you defeat me and protect this girl.
A cheer arose from the passers-by and restaurant patrons who had formed a circle around them.
Whoa, he's picking a fight with Jinrai the Mad Wolf.
Think that's a good idea? He's gonna kill ya.
Yeah, Jinrai's been furious ever since he failed his B rank exam. Katja knows that, and that's why she cut him off the ale.
Ah, makes sense. Getting the cold shoulder from a girl he has feelings for must have put him over the edge. Ain't no stopping him now.
Well, someone's gotta. If an adventurer kills a guy in the middle of town, that's serious. Somebody inform the guild.
They already did, but why don't you stop him, if that's what you think?
Are you crazy? Jinrai's ranked C+, but he's easily worth a B or higher. He failed the exam cause he got points taken off for behavior, but in strength alone, he's a powerhouse. I could never beat him.
Presumably these were co-workers of Jinrai, the giant before Masayuki. Listening to them inspired feelings of both hope and despair at once. Someone was off informing the guild of this. If he could stall long enough, maybe help would come. On the other hand, he had no idea how long it'd take, and nobody in the crowd seemed interested in lending a hand. He had to buy time, and he had to do it solo, and to Masayuki, that sounded like a death sentence.
And look at Katja.
One onlooker muttered.
What's she doing, getting some passing kid involved?
Yeah, why me? Masayuki protested to himself, but he was the one who had nodded to a question he didn't comprehend. He'd put this on himself in the end.
You ready to go?
Of course he wasn't, but it didn't look like he'd be given any more time. Still, if he was going down, he at least wanted to look cool while doing it. He had reimagined his look for high school, but he wasn't some street delinquent. His hair was dyed, but it wasn't like he was any good in a fight. He had gone to some kendo classes in the past, but that wasn't going to help now, not when he didn't even have a piece of wood to battle with. But one thing Masayuki was good at was bluffing.
The bigger they talk, the harder they fall, you know. You sure you're ready for this? After picking a fight with me?
He didn't hesitate to grandstand here. There wasn't any reason not to. He already assumed a single punch would end this. If this bought him some time, perfect. If not, he'd be lucky to get out of it alive. His legs weren't even shaking any longer, his fear must have frozen them in place.
You got guts, huh? Great. Then I don't need to hold back, either.
Jinrai stared Masayuki down, a ferocious-looking smile on his face. Subjected to his threatening gaze, Masayuki immediately began to have regrets. Let's just run now. Oh, but that girl Katja is behind me.
Hey, can you give me a little more space?
Okay, that guy's always looking at me with those leering eyes. Teach him a lesson for me.
Masayuki was trying to secure an escape route, but Katja must have assumed she'd get in the way of his fighting. She finally took her arms off Masayuki and joined the crowd gathering around him. Oh, I'm surrounded anyway, so much for that. Messed that one up, he thought. Jinrai hadn't touched him yet because Katja was draped all over him. Brushing her away because she blocked his escape served only to shorten his life. Jinrai's grin widened. There was just one option left. He'd have to use the gum in his mouth as a smokescreen somehow and escape in the confusion.
Champion level, forward-facing courage, detected. Unlock the power's heroic charm and heroic action from the unique skill chosen 1. The subject Masayuki Honjo has now fully unlocked the unique skill chosen 1.
No, I tried running away. Masayuki's inner voice was ignored. But what was this voice that had been running through his mind? He wasn't sure, but without much idea what he had fully unlocked at all, he decided not to think about it.
That's it for this video, guys. Thank you for always watching my videos and supporting my channel. I'll see you guys in the next video.